Every leader has a moment, that quiet pause between I think I can, I'm not so sure. Welcome to Tutum Talk with me, Karen Nance. Together, we'll explore what it means to lead with heart, to build confidence not from control, but from connection. Because your leadership isn't about perfection, it's about presence. And when you trust yourself, your team will too. Join me as we explore leadership in the everyday and beyond. Welcome back to Tutum Talk. I'm so glad you're here. Truly, if you've landed in this space today, I have a feeling this episode was meant for you. Because today, I want to talk about something that every heart-led leader eventually faces. The moment you wonder if you are the problem. When things feel heavy, when your team feels tense, when there's friction you can't name, when you care deeply and it still feels like you're dragging a boulder up a hill. Most leaders don't point fingers outward, they quietly point them inward, thinking maybe this is my fault. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm making things worse. But what if that isn't the truth at all? What if you're not the problem? You're the pattern breaker. One of the most universal things I've seen across every organization, nonprofit, corporate, education, small business, it's this. The people who care the most often blame themselves the fastest, especially leaders who are reflective, empathetic, emotionally intelligent. When a system feels off, your first thought isn't who messed up? It's what am I missing? What am I doing? But here's the truth most leaders have never been told. Discomfort doesn't always mean you're failing. Sometimes it means the system you inherited was built on dysfunction, and you're the first one awake enough to see it. You weren't supposed to carry the weight of every broken process, but you felt it. You saw it. And because you're wired for responsibility and care, you picked it up anyway. Not because you caused the problem, but because you're the one who couldn't ignore it. Let's talk about resistance. The kind that shows up as pushback, silence, confusion, or people, quote unquote, just not getting it. Most leaders interpret resistance as a sign they're doing something wrong. But here's a different lens. Resistance often appears when a system senses change, even if it's a healthy change. Think about a muscle that hasn't been used in years. Due to atrophy, the moment you start strengthening it, it shakes, it protests, it resists. Not because strengthening is wrong, but because strengthening is new. The same happens in organizations. When a leader brings clarity where there was once ambiguity, when they introduce boundaries where there used to be blurred lines, when they model emotional honesty in a place that avoided hard conversations, when they slow the pace so burnout isn't the norm, when they ask for accountability where people were used to being swept right along. Systems resist the thing they've never practiced. You aren't failing. You're stretching the system into something healthier. And stretching never feels purely comfortable. You might be a pattern breaker if you're the first to name what's been silently hurting people, the unspoken tension, the burnout, the passive aggressive email patterns, the meeting that ends with nothing decided. You also might be a pattern breaker if you feel like the emotional grounding wire in the room. Everyone unconsciously looks to you to bring calm. You also might be a pattern breaker if you carry guilt for things that were broken long before you arrived. Inherited dysfunction that masquerades as personal failure. You also might be a pattern breaker if your presence makes some people uncomfortable. Not because you're harsh, but because you're honest. Honesty disrupts old systems. You also might be a pattern breaker if you're exhausted, not because you're weak, but because you're doing the work others avoided. Pattern breaking uses energy, emotional, mental, spiritual. You also might be a pattern breaker if people trust you with their real feelings, even when they resist your leadership. This is always a sign. If any of these landed, take a breath. That's right, my friend. Take a real deep breath. Your struggle is not evidence of inadequacy. It's evidence of transformation. You've heard me say this before, and it bears repeating. You cannot lead others if you cannot lead yourself. You cannot lead yourself if you don't know yourself. And you cannot know yourself if you're constantly blaming yourself for things that were never yours to hold. Pattern breaking requires self-reflection, healing old wounds, untangling what's yours from what isn't, boundaries that protect your energy, a clear sense of your strengths, and as Gallup defines, anything that gets in the way of your success as known as a weakness by Gallup's definition. And pattern breaking also requires support, real support, so you don't walk the path and navigate the path alone. When you start healing, you stop absorbing the dysfunction. You stop personalizing the noise. You stop carrying the emotional labor of everyone around you. And what happens? The system, slowly, quietly, begins to shift. Not because you forced it, because you changed your presence within it. Here's the reframe I want you to take into your day. Think of it as a bit of a mantra. If it feels hard, it doesn't automatically mean I'm wrong. It might mean I'm the one breaking the pattern. So please keep in mind that you are not failing. You are the first one, brave enough to see clearly, to speak honestly, to care enough to disrupt the cycle. And that matters. The work you're doing is generational for your team, for your organization, for yourself. If today's episode hit something tender in you, if you recognize yourself as a pattern breaker, if you're tired or carrying too much or stuck wondering whether it's you, I want you to know you don't have to navigate that alone. If this message is resonating, I warmly invite you to click the Let's Connect button on the Tutum Leadership Coaching website and schedule a conversation with me. It's no pressure, it's just space. Space to breathe, reflect, and figure out what support you deserve next. You're doing brave work. You are not the problem. You're the pattern breaker. I know you have a lot of options on how you carve out your day and spend your time, and I'm honored that you decided to spend some time here today at Tutum Talk. Remember that leadership, it isn't something that we master once. It's something we grow into, moment by moment. My hope is that today offered you a little more clarity, a little more courage, and a reminder that you're not leading alone. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it too. And remember, confidence doesn't come from having all the answers. It grows from connection, curiosity, and the courage to keep showing up. I'm Karen Nance, and this has been Tutum Talk, exploring leadership in the everyday and beyond. Wanna hear you go.